Greetings, sending you all some warm, positive vibrations. So, I wanted to stop by on the channel quickly today just to share what could perhaps be helpful to some folks. This is not an entertainment channel. So, as can be seen right now, cults and the whole paradigm of cults is rampant right now throughout the various communities. The Afro community, and it is actually it's global. Also, something to be aware of is that there are numerous cults, or the cult pattern is very public right now. So some folks may not realize, but if you take a perhaps step back and look at the patterns of some of the political happenings, and if you look at the new social media platforms that are popping up, and how many folks that initially started out watching some of these cults, how the masses of people still of various different ages are participating, the patterns are pretty much the same. So I don't know if people even realize that folks are actively engaging in feeding the cults, literally sending money to support these different types of activities, while folks stand on eating popcorn as if it's entertainment, but not realizing that the very folks that are supporting and that on these social media platforms, how they're operating, the patterns are the same. So this pattern has gone public. So I wanted to list some resources and some alternatives to cults. These are some resources and perhaps a checklist. This perhaps could be helpful to some young folks that are thinking of traveling to the so-called tropics. It would be advisable if you have some Caribbean friends or some family to visit very safely in your travels, to have backup plans, because traveling is simple. It's very simple. So here's some alternatives to cults and a checklist. So the one resource today, there's a gentleman folks may be familiar with, Tyler Perry, has done a series called Ruthless, and there are several folks commenting on the series. There's one channel in particular called Ruthless TV. It is a little comedic, but in watching several of the episodes, I think it gives a keen insight into some parallels of distinct cult patterns. And I think a helpful distinction is that it's not told through the eyes of someone that is perhaps 21 or 22. I think it does make a big difference when you have someone with a bit more life experience that can draw, from certain patterns. That being said, it is just as easy for somebody in their 20s, their 30s, 40s, 50s, or 60s, depending on if they're exposed to any kind, or if they're vulnerable to a life crisis, loss of a loved one, or sickness, or a divorce, or illness, some kind of life crisis. Anyone can be open, their mind to a cult. And in particular, if you would look at one of the previous references, you would see that some of the more well-known larger cults sometimes operate in open spaces up across the street from hospitals. So there you go. So two particular episodes that I think give a good amount of insight into the loyalty of women to cults. This could be women or men. One of the episodes on Ruthless TV on YouTube is called Unbreakable Bond, and it gives insight into one person in particular, but again, this could apply to women or men. I think it is an interesting phenomenon to step back and look at, not even a phenomenon. I think it can perhaps be very sobering to look at the participation of women in cults, because this is men and women that are participating and feeding these cults for various different reasons. The cult leader or the manipulator knows how to work with each group specifically. So that one episode, Unbreakable Bond. Number two is the ABCs of mind control. How did he do it? So again, those two videos, they're very short, can be found on Ruthless TV on that YouTube channel. Some other alternatives to cults, I've listed some resources, perhaps something to think of. And sometimes if we're in the midst of a life crisis, we're not thinking objectively. at those times, we could perhaps be operating from a space of fear, anxiety, and our decision making isn't very clear. If this is a young person, and as we've seen, there are folks that may be out on the street or estranged from their family, or they may have been uh, doing some things in life that may have not been on a really positive track, or just a very risky track, and they may be desperately looking for a way out. So you could be going from one narcissist or one sketchy situation into another situation. So here's some alternatives, right? And there are some resources on this channel. Some things to consider: therapy, literal therapy. There are also some therapy sliding scales. There's a lot more free therapy that's being offered to folks during this time. Therapy, and there are also some great online resources, which I mentioned in the previous video. And there are also several not-for-profit organizations that have appeared on the scene to offer therapy and counseling, whether that's fathers, young fathers, folks that may be perhaps thinking of inflicting self-harm because they're just so desperate or stressed out. So those resources are in the previous video. Therapy, gardening, because it is so therapeutic, fitness. So perhaps this could just going over, having this conversation with some folks can maybe give you some other ideas to think of, because cult leaders can be painting a picture of a utopia in the tropics or another country. And these are things you have access to even without any money anywhere that you are. Greetings. So there's therapy, there's gardening, right? There's some free resources, video resources on this channel. There's fitness. There's also a process called reparenting. Again, for those folks that may not have the physical, the monetary resources, there's one particular channel on YouTube that discusses, there's several people discussing it, but there is a chocolate woman that gives a simple breakdown of reparenting on her YouTube channel called New Mind Frame. And she deals a lot with narcissism as well as trauma. So the process of reparenting, or finding ways that you can self-administer therapy that is distinctly different and separate from cults and from religion, is huge. Because folks, especially if you're young and you're hearing, you may even be a bit more seasoned, but you're hearing some new information that you haven't heard before, and it may seem like it's the answer to your problems. However, you may likely not be aware of the motive of the person that's administering this information, or who you're going to for advice. So there's a process called reparenting. Do check out New Mind Frame on, she has a YouTube channel. There are also some things, these things may seem basic, but perhaps we could take for granted that some folks are not having these conversations about intimate relations and the consequences thereof. So I'm talking about your reproductive organs and intimacy. Many folks have grown up without having these conversations until you've been exposed. And as we can see on some of these social media platforms, you can see it's a free-for-all. There's just a lack of guidance. That being said, once you are in your 20s, 25, 26, 27, you're still old enough where it's your responsibility to seek out solutions for yourself. So you may be young, but you're still going to get the consequences. So I would recommend, there are actually some really excellent channels on YouTube. So you can actually get an education, a comprehensive, objective, not coming from so-called spirituality or chakras. A lot of times some of this information is so lofty that it's just no practicality, or it's in the absence of common sense. It can be observed that folks are embracing astrology almost like looking for a fortune teller. And so it doesn't appear to be grounded in any kind of practicality. Knowing your astrological sign isn't going to protect you from a life-threatening STD, which many of these STDs can put you at risk for cancer, right? They can really put you at risk for cancer, not to mention other types of diseases and infections. So I do recommend that folks, in a very practical sense, go online and look at pictures of the various, the myriad, the plethora of different diseases, whatever your age is, to educate yourself about your reproductive organs. Again, astrology is not a substitute for medical advice or for knowing about your reproductive organs. And quite often there's a conflict of interest in who you're going to. If you're going to somebody on the street that hasn't been vetted, right? If somebody's trying to sleep with you, that's likely, or to engage with you intimately, that's not likely somebody you want to go to for advice on how to, work with your reproductive organs. The other thing I've mentioned several times is a vetting process for folks in their their teens or their 20s, a vetting process for men or for women these days, because let's not get it twisted. Human beings are capable of deviancy. It just is what it is. Although there are not as many, we've heard stories now that there can be uh, women that can mishandle children or be abusive to children, whether that's verbally or to mishandle children. There are even a few women that have started cults. Not a lot, but it exists out here. So a vetting process, young people, a vetting process is when you run an interview, a background check, a cross-referencing, not just from going by what the person you're telling is telling you. If you're asking someone about their history or yet their background, you can't rely. It's not likely you're going to get objective information if you're going only to that person. So the cross-reference is to look and to find out literally at that person's prison records, so that you on your own can make an accurate assessment using your onboard divine innate common sense of that person, their pattern, their show improve, not words, but their patterns of behavior and their history. Because somebody telling you words is not any kind of evidence of a change of character and any consistency in their behavior patterns. So using new folks and new information as a say escapism could really have you get yourself hurt out here. So a vetting process, you're asking questions and something to look for. If you're asking questions and someone has issue with you asking uncomfortable questions, that already is a red flag, and it is very hot here. Okay. So also safe travel, include that also inside of your vetting process, having a checklist for travel to make you have backup plans, you have enough resources, monetary resources, phone cards, people's information, knowing where you're going, how long you're staying, the visa requirements, all the fees, the border fees, where you're going, back up your round trip ticket, how long you can stay in the country. You want to have a vetting process that's independent of the person or whatever place that you're going to, your destination, and make sure that several people know where you're traveling to, your travel plans. Right? That's for your own safety should things not turn out the way that you had intended. So you want to have your vetting process for men and women. And also, that's anybody, right? So you can assess and accurately assess their character. That's if they take care of their children, if they have children that are not being parented, financially taking care of their children, why did they leave, cross-referencing their peers, jobs, prison records, bank, criminal record. This is the age of the internet. So the internet and also in person too, this is for your safety. So the other thing, let's see. So your safe travel. Also on social media, some other things I mentioned in a previous video that you can be looking at to help you, right? So that, because this is the age of so much distraction. One is you can get some apps, some free apps for your computer. You can set a timer so you can notice, because a lot of the social media, it's actually very addictive. So you can notice how many hours that you're spending on social media and being engaged in some of these apps, as well as in some of the drama. And as an alternative, you could perhaps be investigating. There's a great many channels on human excellence. There's some channels on studying. If you want to pick up a new skill right now, there's a lot of opportunity to learn numerous languages, gardening, human excellence in all manner and fields of study, as well as you have budgeting, how to clear up your credit. There's conflict resolution. It's all different types of information to be had on YouTube. So if you have access to a phone or a computer, you can take advantage of these things. Also, if you're a young person, or perhaps even if you're more seasoned, perhaps something for you to take a look at is coming up with a 5-year plan for yourself? Where would you like to be in 5 years, and to reverse engineer and to work backwards in terms of how you're going to be able to sustain yourself. This is especially if you have any kind of visions, whether you are in the States or if you would like to travel and you would like to purchase land. Everything is a process. And so you want to be very wary of someone trying to offer you a quick fix to shortcut the process. So it's very important, right? A couple of key things that can keep you safe, that are principles you can carry with you for the rest of your life. Accountability and responsibility. Anyone that is encouraging you to shortcut your being accountable, whether that's your reproductive organs, your money, parenting, your future, be wary, right? Accountability and responsibility. Folks that are telling you can just run over to, another country. Usually, if somebody's offering you a get out of jail free card, you want to be wary, because you might be going from the frying pan into the fire. So just those two things, especially as a young person, there may be some things, maybe you've gotten yourself into some situations in ignorance, in your teens, in your 20s, you may be thinking your life is doomed. However, you can actually be very freed up if you just on your own in your quiet moments, no need to put it all over social media, perhaps spend some time and just look into how to be accountable. If you've parented, if you've got taken out loans or whatever, you can find your way out of it. But running from these things are usually right there waiting for you, right? There's Interpol, check out Interpol. Those things are checked when you're going into and out of other countries, especially if you're planning on staying there for a while. Interpol is just one of the checks that they do on you to see what your criminal record is when you're going internationally, amongst others, right? So accountability and responsibility, those are two principles that are cult-free that will help you to activate your divine onboard common sense. Another very practical thing is to know people's legal names that you're dealing with. If you ever have to hold someone accountable, and another good principle is consequences. It is good, it is positive to enact consequences. Consequences can be legal, financial, and physical, whether you're male or female, especially if you're feminine presence. So before you go into something, think, what are the consequences for mishandling of finances, for mishandling somebody physically, for mishandling contracts and agreements? Are you even making clear agreements? Or are you only going by word? I really implore you not to go by people's word. That could be family, especially with people that you have met, because people have different contexts. They remember things differently, forget details. And sometimes you can really be putting yourself in a situation and perhaps squander your inheritance, your money for school, and squander opportunities. And also to protect yourself physically, so you're not put into a position that you had not even, banked on. Consequences, human beings respond to consequences. Somebody can be bigger than you, savvier, maybe perhaps quote unquote scarier than you, but everybody responds to consequences. And consequences that people respond to usually are monetary, right? When you hit them in the pockets, that's everybody, male, female. Legal consequences, which is why you want to know everybody's legal name. If you're dealing with somebody intimately, so that you can hold people accountable and you can be held accountable. Know people's legal names. If somebody does not want to tell you their legal name, then it's not advisable that you deal with them intimately, right? Consequences, legal, financial, and physical. So I don't need to tell you, because I know my sister and I, we go, to the range. Enough said. So know people's legal names. Something also to be mindful of is to observe the money trail. Just like YouTube is not free, and we're taking for granted the currency of our attention. Everything, sometimes perhaps you may not be savvy to, is the how things are monetized. If these platforms are paying someone $3,000 or $5,000 a month, what is the money trail? What is the big picture? So a lot of times we're not looking basically at who owns the company and what is the incentive. We're not really, reverse engineering to look at the money trail. right? So in all things, know what is your legal recourse. I think we went over that. In all things, anyone that you're dealing with, know what your legal recourse is. And I think I'm going to keep it short with just those things. So there's some alternatives to cults. There's some resources in a checklist. There's a plethora. There's so much information that's on this channel, not an entertainment channel. Sometimes people will ask me a question of what I think. It's not, I've said, what my experience is. I've listed resources, but there's no matter what I think, if you're engaged in something and if you have to ask certain questions, that's already a red flag. More importantly, what do you think? So I'm not here to tell grown folks what to do, because that doesn't work and I don't get anything out of that. And I have to make sure that I am protected, because it is the wild, wild west out here. And some folks are looking for an adventure. And it's, unfortunately, at this point, looks like a circus on here. And I really don't think folks in their 20s or their 30s, a lot of folks are just not thinking long term. And many of these manipulators and these cult leaders, they know that this is the age of distraction. I've even heard them say, nobody's coming to look for you. So there is so much, there's so much distraction. It really comes down to people's choices. The email across, they reach, I'd love to have you discuss cults and how to spot them on my channel. So if you would leave your information, because I think I can remove it from here, then I can reach out to you, and then I will check out and research your channel. But I have put a lot of information here. I'm not really looking for followers, anything like that. I want everybody to remain safe, even the folks I had an experience with. But however, people will put themselves in alignment for all kinds of stuff based on their own behavior. So I have so much information that's on this channel. However, let me see. I will take down your information. And then I will delete it. Yeah, so there's so much information, and people have asked before, and I'm so glad that I did not go on a whole lot of people's channels, because even though many folks may have been well-intentioned, so many of the channels out here have gotten have twisted into something else, and now all of it's everything has morphed into something else. And initially, I thought many people were interested in growing food. So I do have some gardening. I'd rather spend a lot of time gardening. I think that it's still a priority. That's been a priority wherever I go, so that I can feed myself. Plus, it's relaxing. These are wonderful alternatives to a cult. It doesn't matter. People in Alaska and in Norway are gardening. Yes, definitely. So the gardening, the language, this education, there's organization, there's so many skills, so much to be had. And there are actually some lessons for us all to learn from all this cult activity. It's only so many hours in the day. And just like a week's worth of time, I got so much planted and so much weeded in a small space that looks like a massive garden, not with 1 million people, just with some kind of focus. And it's worth it. It's relaxing. This is stuff that we all can do. So if we're saying, I was waiting for you to teach me, the information is there at our fingertips. So just want to encourage everyone to keep their thinking caps on, and I will investigate your channel, and I'm going to hide your comment now. All right, so that being said, you all create a great evening. Keep your thinking caps on. There's an extensive list of cult information, all different types of cults, any that you can think of, Black cults, white cults, and everything in between, so you can understand the patterns. I think perhaps the shortcut is to understand and be able to discern and recognize the patterns, because many people think that can never happen to me. More than ever, the phenomenon and the paradigm of cult is if you can't see the patterns, it has gone public. And people that think they're just watching don't realize the extent to which most people are participating in cult activity. So it has morphed into something else, which is a circus. So if you were to look at the amount of time that is being spent when a lot of stuff is going on now, so distraction is on level 10. There's still food to be grown. There's still communication skills to learn. There's still health to be, gotten. There's a lot to do, but there's just so much distraction from our lives, which can become very addictive. So I'll just say that. Wish you all a good evening, and y'all take care.